Hello, hello, hello there, everyone. Patricia here. So glad to join you this morning. A little late, but we're here. The technical difficulties are never ending. Anyway, so if this is your first time joining, welcome. This is Coffee Time Career Chat. My name is Patricia Hayes, and I am an executive advisor, career empowerment coach, authentic networking strategist. Basically, I love working with women to help empower them, guide them along their path to the next level of who they want to be, and to do it in a way that's authentic and sustainable in building their relationships and supporting their careers and their businesses for the long term. So, welcome. Today we're talking about we're kind of taking a little bit of a mindset conversation this month. I am not a quote mindset coach, right? I'm very particular about that. But the reality is that when we are addressing or dealing with growth in particular, but in any case, when we are trying to get to the next level of who we want to be and what we want to do, there are going to come up some challenges, right? External and internal. And the internal challenges can be just as great, especially when it comes to what's going on upstairs in our little brain and being able to call them out and to name them, and then to get the support that you need along the way to address them. So I will be the first to say, number one, that this is an issue that comes up and that is addressed over the course of our whenever I'm working one-on-one with someone, because there's always something in the background, right? And so you got to pull it up, you got to name it, you have to acknowledge it, and then do the inner work to address it, to release the power that it has over what it is you're trying to do next. And those are things that we start talking about while we are actually building out the plan, while we are actually identifying the networks of people that we need to engage in, while we are working through how we build up our professional relationships, right? So it's not an either or, it's a one and. Like it's an and so anyone who tells you otherwise is just flat out lying to you. It's not realistic. And whether they name it as such or not, you will have to address some mindset blocks along your journey to growth in your career, in your business. Been there, done that many times. And so today, we're going to talk about a few of identifying what the thing is, how it gets named, see if any of them sound familiar to you. Then talk a little bit about some potential, I won't say solutions, but reflections that come about, and some actions that you can take while you work through and do the longer term inner work, right? But while you take the reflection, while you get the rest that you need, while you get the additional support that you need in order to make the work that you're doing sustainable and become an integral part of who you are. I know that I have been one for professional development and growth forever, right? It's all I've ever known or thought about. Not so much because someone said, hey, you need to go do this, but that's because that's the nature of who I am. And I am always looking for additional growth opportunities. And as things have developed, and especially after I went out on my own, recognizing the value of getting the coaching, of getting the additional support to really work through it. And it is an investment, right? An investment of time and money. And so you have to be committed, and you have to be willing to be committed if you're really wanting to achieve at the next level, to pursue the goals or dreams that you have, then you will need to be willing also to make the commitment of both time and or money to get there. That's bottom line. So I got to say that up front before we talk about any of the rest of this, because it's the truth. It's what anyone, if I go call any of my professional friends, my clients, or um, biz buddies, they will tell you all the same thing. It may not look the same and it may have different names and people may call it different things, but it all boils down to like, you got to get your head on straight and you have to take this other action over here and you got to travel that journey simultaneously. All right. So don't feel like you're out of, what you're doing or feeling is out of the normal. I have to say that up front as well, because it is so common. So don't feel shamed, don't feel embarrassed, all of that. One of the things that the quicker you learn is that while we are all special in our own right, a lot of the times the things that we are dealing with, we are not so special. And we are, because it means we are not the first to experience them. And that is actually something of support that you should feel good about because it means there's support out there for you. It means there's an answer to help get you to where you want to be because someone else has experienced it. All right. So that's actually a great thing that I want to share with you to remind you of you are not alone. You're not the first and you can do it. Right. I love that. I'm just going to have to put that down. You're not alone. You're not the first and you can do it. And that's it. And the question is how? It's just how. How are you going to get there? All right. Okay. So what we're going to do here is, name a few of, I've got like 4 of the most common things that I hear that I know that people have experienced when it comes to you're getting to a certain point in your career, you're getting to a certain point in your business, and you're just like, and so we're going to talk about what the is. And the overarching question that I want you to ask yourself when you identify whichever one of these moments, right? Or just call it the moment. And that is what's the fear that's attached to it? What are you scared of? And the funny thing about fear and these things is that some of them may seem like they don't make sense. It doesn't mean they're not valid, right? Because a fear that may get attached to something can actually be a positive one, right? A fear of success, right? You're like, oh, that's crazy. I'm like, it's real, right? You get to a certain point and you're like, what if this really happens? What do I do? Okay. So you have to name it and you have to acknowledge what is the fear that's attached to that. And you need to do that without judgment. Um, do it more with curiosity, right? Be thoughtful about it and ask yourself what's really going on here. Because that's a lot of times what we have to do is like, what's really going on here? And then sit with that. Okay. And be willing to receive the answer that comes to you. Journal, write it out. Get stuff out of your head. I always say that. It's always a benefit. Get stuff out of your head. And then determine what's the next action that you can take as a result of that. And again, remembering it's a journey. It's not this is not a 100-meter race. This is what is it? This is not a sprint. Let me say that. Let me tell you what it's not. It's not a sprint. Okay. But the thing is, once you take those steps and start moving, you will be amazed at what comes open to you because you're willing to be open, to be thoughtful, to receive those things, then things are going to start coming to you. People are going to start coming to you. Resources will start coming to you. I'm not telling you what I know. I know it sounds a little woo, but it's so true. Your eyes will be open to more things for you to be able to take a look at, to discuss, to think about, to reflect on, and then to take the action that you feel is appropriate again as you move along. Okay, so the first moment that I've identified is a very common one, which is the moment when someone says, I'm stuck. It's just kind of like you just get to a point, you feel like you're beating your head against a brick wall, and you're just, which causes a lot of frustration. It causes a lot of angst, very clearly. And so what is it that you do when you're in that moment of I'm stuck? I don't know what to do anymore. What am I supposed to do? And really feeling like you don't have any support, you don't have any resources, you don't have something, right? So when you get to that I'm stuck feeling, a lot of times it comes as a result of either feeling like you're forced to do certain things, right? You're not feeling like you have the flexibility or the ability to, to move around, to do some gives and takes. And that adds to that angst of feeling like you're really beating your head against the wall. Um, you feel boxed in, yes. And so a lot of times the action to be taken when you're having that specific feeling is actually to get outside the box. It's actually to get outside of the uh to be more flexible, to be more engaging in a specific way. And a lot of times that's affiliated with being creative in some way. Because when we feel boxed in and I'm stuck, it means you're not your brain, your thoughts are just not you're here. you know? And so you have to create an environment where it's okay for you not to follow the straight line. I say this because I was absolutely a straight line follower. I'm like, got to do this because of everything that's going on around. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But when you get to that point and you're like, but I want to do this next thing, but I feel like I'm stuck here. And it's because you're feeling this pressure, whether internal or external. And so I want to challenge you to that the action to take in that moment is something creative, whether it's something physical, whether it's something mental, like physically get yourself outside of the box, right? Go take the walk, go paint, go take a class, something like that. So that will help free your brain to move past whatever that thing is that's blocking your next thought so that you can get to it. The goal is not to get all the way down the lane, right? It's to get to that next thought. And so give yourself the freedom that you need to get there. And being creative and taking yourself outside of the quote norm is a way to be able to do that. It's the very reason why, let's say you're working on a project, you're working on something, and you get stuck and you're just like, oh my gosh, I just can't get these words out, or I can't figure out what that next thing is, whatever. And so you go take a shower or you go take a walk, not thinking about that project or whatever at all, and all of a sudden the answer comes to you. That it's the same concept. There are lots of technical words for it. I'm not going to give them to you. I probably don't even know all of them. But that is exactly the thing, is because you have given your brain a rest and permission to move on. And then what happens is you have your brain, your body has the ability to receive what's the next thing is. And that's why it comes to you in the shower, in the middle of the night, while you're walking. So this is one of those things where I always recommend. I know lots of people who do it, who keep a pen and a sticky note or a pad or something like in the bathroom or next to their nightstand, or when they walk, they have their little notes thing so they can grab, take some notes real quick when they have a thought that comes to them, because that's very often how it comes. So the thing is to be deliberate about creating that moment of freedom, that moment. So, go deliberately take the walk, go deliberately, read a book unrelated to what you're working on. Unrelated to what it is you're trying to get to. Be creative, go take the class, go do something fun and see how quickly you can start to unblock that, how it will come to you and make it a practice, right? That's something you can make a practice. The second moment, everyone is doing better. The comparitis. all that comparison, all of that, oh, everyone else is doing so much better. And in this day and age of social media, oh my God. Like, first of all, we do know that we cannot believe everything we see on social media. We cannot believe everything we see on the TV. Like, we can't believe half of that crap, right? Let's lay that out there. That is the first reminder we have to tell ourselves, because so often, even prior to the pandemic and everything, where everything was so, just limited to what you can see on a screen, whether it's your phone, your computer, your TV, it was still the same, right? It's trying to keep up with the Joneses based on what you see, not based on what you know about what's actually going on. So that's that first thing, because this is that thing that causes us to have what's labeled as imposter syndrome. Because we think, oh, I'm not good enough. I'm not, I'm not enough to do this. And so I'm lacking in some way. Well, first of all, do we all have points of growth? Absolutely, right? So are we technically lacking in something? Potentially, some skills, some knowledge, maybe we don't know the right certain people for certain things. But most of the time, it is not something that prevents you from being able to get what you need, right? There's always growth. There's always room for growth. And so that's what we need to remember. And also, where I started off, which is, you cannot believe everything you see. Bottom line, you cannot. You cannot believe everything you see. And just because it looks good and it looks like someone's so successful, whatever, doesn't mean it's so. I read a lot online, a lot, in articles and all of that. And the reality is that well, first of all, some people just flat out lie. Some people exaggerate, or they're just putting their best foot forward. So what you see may be true, but it's not the whole story, right? So maybe it's more of that. Like, pieces of it might be true, but it's not the whole story. And when we lay out things that are only partial truths, then yes, and people rely on that creates this disconnect, and it also can cause angst in folks. So here's the thing: this is a moment of maturity and growth and discernment that each of us has to have individually in order to move forward, because we just have to realize, it's not for me to judge whether or not what they're saying is true or not, but I have to say for myself, I don't need to compare myself to that, because I don't know the whole story. Unless someone is being much more forthright and upfront about what is going on in the background. And I know there's some people out there that I truly respect who have done that, from a business standpoint, um, from a influencer standpoint. Again, still realizing, like, it's being selective about what's being put out there. But it's one of the things that I value, right? Which is being authentic, being real. And you can be authentic and real and genuine without laying all your business in the street, right? So it's not a matter of like you owe anyone all the dirty details. That's not it. However, even the acknowledgement of this is not perfect, or there are some real challenges here, that makes things much more, not just realistic, but where you can connect with people, and where you can support people, and honestly, let people know that, real life happens. And so that's why I know that I tell some of the stories. And I know there are others, like I said, who function the same way, because they value that genuineness, that authenticity, and to give people the support that they really need. And what people really need is to know it ain't perfect. There are pitfalls along the way, but here's how you can get through them. So, what does that have to do with everyone is doing better and that whole imposter syndrome? Well, first of all, Step away from comparing yourself to other people because you don't know the full story, what's going on there. Secondly, dealing with that deeper issue of acknowledging that you are, are enough and you are worthy of whatever is the next thing, right? That's really what gets to that. It's questioning whether or not we're really worthy of getting to that next thing, of achieving that next goal, and questioning our abilities. And one of the actions that I love, love, love when this issue comes up personally and when other folks is instead of stressing about what might happen next or the fact that you're not there and what are all the reasons why not, how about taking this step backwards and giving yourself credit for the things that you did do, that you have accomplished, the challenges you have overcome. I have had to do this exercise several times in my career, throughout my business, and it's probably time to do it again. But it is when I go back and find the notes because I have journals for everything. But when I go back and look at those notes, just looking at the notes from doing that self reflection is so powerful because it reminds me of things that I have forgotten about. We forget way more of what we've accomplished in our lives, in our careers, in our businesses than we remember going forward, right? So when you give yourself credit for what you've already done and acknowledge, man, I remember when I thought I wasn't going to make it through that. And here's what I did. Here's who supported me. Here are how things worked themselves out. Those are the moments when you can say, not only am I worthy and enough to do the next thing, like I have more than enough to get myself to get where I want to be at the next level. And I'm going to learn more to support that. Okay. It is a very powerful exercise. I highly recommend that this is one that you take time with, that you do the reflection work and actually write down what you come up with. A good prompt is starting with when was there a time, revisit a time when you really felt your back was up against the wall and you did not think you were going to overcome whatever the situation was. What happened? What actions did you take? What help did you receive? What insights did you gain from that experience? Just one will get you so far. And then other situations will start coming up to you. I want you to reflect and take the time to work through that because that will give you the fodder and the foundation that you need to address the fact of you're more than enough. You have what you need. You don't need to be worried about what everybody else got. You don't need to be worried about that. You have what you need to support yourself in the next level and recognizing those things where there may be gaps. You can figure it out. You can get help. You can ask questions. You can get the support that's needed to get to that next thing. Okay. All right. So that's moment number 1, 2. Moment number 3. Let me see. No, this is number 3. Is now this is a tough one. This may be one of the hardest ones. This is the my family and friends don't understand moment. And this leads to feeling like you don't have any support because when those people closest to you don't understand what you're trying to do or where you're trying to go, it can be really frustrating. And they can either unconsciously block and not support you or very consciously. I mean, honestly, the unconscious blocking can be I won't say be more damaging, but can be as damaging as someone actively, at least you actively know what they think. And this can be hard, right? Because we want the people who we're closest to, who we love, who love us. We want them to be a part of this, right? You're so excited about what the next thing is going to be in your career, for your business, what it is you're doing. And you can't get that support, or it seems like they don't believe you, or they don't believe in you. This is tough. This is tough. And again, been there, done that, have watched it happen, talked to people who happen. And there are a couple of things you have to remember here is if you are faced with that situation, congratulations. You are a trailblazer, because that's what it means. When you get to a point where folks around you and closest to you question what you're doing, not from a supportive, okay, how can we help, make it happen, but from a, I'm not really sure this is the right thing. Why are you doing this? I don't understand. Then you're serving as a trailblazer in your family, in your community, because you're doing something other people either cannot do or are too afraid to do. And coming to that realization on all those fronts is a lot. Trust me, I know, I've been there. It is a lot, especially if it's coming from multiple sources, right? And this is where you have to do a couple of different things. Number one, mentally, you have to separate yourself from the need of external validation from those families, that family and friend. It's the truth. You have to remove yourself from that need from that external validation, because more than likely at this particular point where you are, you're not going to get it, right? If they don't understand, if they're not being respectful of what it is you're trying to accomplish, then you have to minimize that negativity on what it is you're trying to do. Doesn't mean you cut off your family, doesn't mean you cut off your friends. It means maybe you don't discuss your business with them anymore. Maybe you don't discuss what your next level goals are, right? You don't discuss it with them, because you're not going to get the support that you feel like you should get from them. It's not going to come. It's not going to come right now. It may not ever come, right? And those are tough realizations. Those are really tough realizations. So, that said, what can you do? Because you do need the support. And this is where you have to acknowledge some levels of vulnerability, and you have to reach out to other people who do get you, who do understand what it means to try to reach for that next level executive position, who do understand what it means to make sacrifices to put a business in place. Okay. Find your people. That requires some work. It requires you to talk to others. It requires some vulnerability, but it's okay and it's necessary, because you do need that support. One of the realizations I had along that journey for myself, there was a lot going on, man. There are so many stories there. But one of the realizations is that when we think that we don't have the support we need because it's not coming from these specific people or, friends or family that we think we should get to, the reality is, if you sit and think about it a little bit, you do have the support you need. It's just coming in smaller chunks from someone else who hasn't played as big a role in your life. So when you sit back and you give some thoughts to that, and I call it your fan club, who are those people that have been in your corner no matter what? And it doesn't mean they're out there being big rah rah all the time. They very well could be. Or they could be the person who pops in every couple of months and say, "Hey, Trish, how are you doing? I see you're doing some great things out there. Love to hear about it." Or, "Good luck, let me know if I can help you in some way." That person, that person, those are the people you turn to, right? To dig a little deeper, to build out that relationship a little bit further. And if they aren't the ones themselves, they're like, "Hey, I'm not in that space to be able to support you right now, but let me get you someone," right? This is when seeking out those relationships and letting those relationships work for you, this is when it happens. Okay. So I just want to encourage you and remind you that you do have what you need. It just may not be coming from the sources or the people that you expect to come from. This is a super tough one. Lots of stories here. Happy to have a conversation with you offline. And maybe I'll share some at another time, but I do want you to know that you do have the support that you need, and that to remember that you're a trailblazer. And trailblazers, they're doing stuff that people don't understand in the time that they're creating that path, when they're blowing through things and creating new things. Okay. So you do have the support. Change your perspective, change where you're looking for it to come from. That is the thing. And then shift and build, and then to put those folks or things who don't support you in that thing, who aren't don't understand, don't have the ability to understand, that's just a piece of the puzzle that's not going to be it's not going to be beneficial to share with them right now. Right? This is hardcore stuff, y'all. This is the stuff people won't talk about, but it's the truth. Okay. And we're talking about it in terms of addressing your career or CEO mindset blocks, and family and friends are right up in the middle of that. Okay. And people don't want to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it and tell you the truth, because it's a very real part of who you are and what you're doing. And it was one of the toughest for me. And acknowledging that, and then being able to have that conversation with other people who were actually experiencing it. Oh my gosh, so freeing. Again, why? Because like I said earlier, you are not the only one, and you are not the first. So when you come to that realization and you open your mouth and have some conversations with people, boom, there you go. You learn. Guess what? There are other people like me who've experienced this. Let me have a conversation with them about how to move past it and to get the support that I need. All right. That's moment number 3. Moment number 4. This one here. I'm tired. I'm just tired and I can't do this anymore. Right. This is where you're probably really on the road to burnout if you haven't already gotten there. And it may be probably this is a little mixture of all of the other 3, right? Just coming to a head. And you're just like, I've had it. I'm just tired. And this is where it's going to be really important to do some serious reflection. Get the rest you need, right? But not just the superficial stuff. Do we need to take vacations? Absolutely. Do we need to go, get some quiet time? Absolutely. But when you're on the verge of burning out, it is more than what a vacation can fix. Okay. This is more than just a long weekend solution, issue that needs to be resolved, right? A long weekend is not going to be the way to solve it. This is going to require some serious reflection to address the real source of why you're so, quote, tired. Because when we say I'm tired, people often will say, oh, you know what? Oh, go get some rest, go get some sleep. And we may need that. But most of the time, it's beyond the physical. And it's much more into the mental, the emotional, the spiritual, whatever it may be. And we have to come to terms with that. One of my favorite clients, one of my first clients, came up in her last career transition. And while we were in the midst of working through it, and she was just hitting some walls and just getting really frustrated, and she's like, And so then we realized, we're like, let's take a little time out and let's talk about what is it that you do? What have you done in the past when you've gotten to this space? And we learned, and it was first time, we worked together several times, but this was the first time it actually came up where she revealed, because, there have been times before when I've done this, I just took off and I just went. And I went on a retreat, or I did something like that. Like I completely disconnected myself from everything around me. And I'm like, really? I was like, wow, I guess it might be time for that. And she's like, oh, because it had not crossed her mind. And then within a week, she told me, and she's like, I'm shutting everything down. I'm going out of the country. I'm going to for a long-term retreat, and I'll follow up when I get back. And I was like, alrighty then. And what happened? Well, not even a full week, I think, was she gone. Then things started popping off. She started messaging me. She's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this stuff is popping up now that I've actually stepped away. That's what happens when we finally decide to give ourselves what we need most. It's amazing about how things open up and we start to receive what we wanted all along, right? And so she didn't come rushing back into it. She gave herself the time. She stayed away, came back refreshed, much healthier, completely shifted mindset, and then dove back into it and built up. And one thing led to another, and she is where she wants to be right now, and still blowing a trail, right? Just being a trailblazer in her own life. Okay, so that I'm tired is beyond the physical, and this is why I say it takes some really deep reflection work. Get yourself a coach, get yourself a therapist if that's what you need, get a group, whatever it is. Do the work to figure out what the real need is, and then give it to yourself. Again, an investment of time and money. And most of the time, we don't have the luxury of being able to put it on to the side while we do it. Unfortunately, when that happens, something has reached a crisis moment, right? Like our health is in jeopardy, a family member's health is in jeopardy, something else has come up. And so and that's what we don't want to get to that point. I'm saying all that. We don't want to get to that point where you're forced to take the deeper rest that you may need. So be active about it. Have you heard that word a lot? Be active, take action. And the action taking that we're talking about is not about just doing another thing. It's about being another way. Oh my goodness. That's some awesome stuff right there. Not just about doing another thing, but being another way. I I think that's just like I think we stop there. I just think we stop there. It's about being another way. Okay? And for yourself. And I know this has been very much more like, here, but we need that. We sometimes we have to step past all the strategies and do this and do that and be like, but what do I really need? Like here, down in my heart, my soul, spirit, like what do I really need? Because guess what? We are whole beings. We are not flat Stanleys. I say this all the time. We are not just standing over there and then, you get to be your whole self when you come home. No, you get to be your whole self all the time. And the sooner we recognize that, the better off we will be. All right. There's some great resources, books, different things. There's too many to name. I'm sure I only named a few here. One of my favorites that I actually need, a couple of my favorites that I actually need to go back and reread myself, these three. One is The Gifts of Imperfection by Brene Brown. Love, love, love this little book. It's probably one of my favorites of all of her books. And it really gets into that whole, questioning of who you are and how we can be more of our whole selves while taking into account, all these outside pressures and internal ones, but stepping into who we are in our whole beings as imperfect beings, right? The Art of War by Stephen Pressfield. I have not read this one in a hot minute, and it is at the top of my list of things to read again because it's that whole stepping outside the box, challenging, what you see externally and internally as well. It's a good little book. And then The Big Leap by I think it's Gay Hendricks. I think that's right. This is one that's on the list that for my clients to read. I need to get back to it. Think I'm behind in reading it again. My goal is trying to read it at least once or twice a year, and I need to do that for myself as well. It is one that I learned about a few years back after working with one of my own coaches right before, and it's just life changing in terms of really learning who you are and becoming and digging deep, not just on what you're really good at, but like what beyond what you're really good at, right? Like, what is that really niche thing that you excel? Like, this is who you are because you're so. And when we touch those moments and what it means to be able to connect that up and be our whole selves again, professionally and personally in that context, man, it's super powerful stuff. It's a great book. Um, Podcasts, tons of them. Brene Brown, of course, is one. I've listened to a few of her things, but it's an easier way to get some of her content, is what I would say. If you're not, big on reading or, being able to get through some of the books, checking into her podcast is, I highly recommend. And then my latest favorite that I have been binging on and off for a few months now is Rachel Rogers' podcast. That's Rogers with a D. She is a phenomenal African American woman who has started a business. She's an attorney who started a business and shifted, and she focuses on helping women, people of color, historically underrepresented populations to build wealth in their communities as well. And her podcast is raw, and it is like to the point. So if you don't like it raw, then you might not want to listen. But if you want the truth, listen to it. And I think it's a few years old, a couple of years old. You can go back. I highly recommend digging back to some of the ones way back at the beginning, because those are ones where she really kicked off doing a lot of self-reflection conversations herself before she started bringing on guests and or some of the topics. So just take a look back at some of those topics, and I'll try to remember if someone wants to know some of my favorites, because I have a couple that I just literally have like starred in my phone, and I go back and listen to them over and over again because they have what I need right in that moment. Like that's how good they are, because there's the reminder of, get up off your butt, go do what needs to be done. Go, change how you're thinking about X, and then take action on that. So some of the concepts we've talked about here today. So this has gone a little bit longer than I normally would have. I'm just kind of like chatting through it, and but I hope it's been helpful to you all. And if you have any questions, do not hesitate to reach out. Happy to schedule a conversation with you about what the next level of you looks like and what support you need to get there. And if I'm not the person to give it to you, we will find the right person for you. Okay? Take care and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.